Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's info session. We had a wonderful one on Monday with an alumnus of ours, Dean Meadows, who runs the Daily Apologist. You can check him out online and see what he's up to and doing. My name is Michael Strasberg, and I'm the Prospective Student Coordinator for the MA Christian Apologetics and MA Science and Religion programs. And we're happy to have you with us here today. I'm gonna let my two colleagues introduce themselves first, and then I'll go ahead and introduce our student guest for today. Megan, do you wanna go ahead and start with your introduction?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Megan Clark, and I handle all our conferences and events that we do in our program, as well as marketing and some other pieces. But yeah, we hope to see you at one of our conferences this semester. We're going to be in Dallas for EPS this year, as well as going to Victorville as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
And we're hoping that Victorville has a live stream capability, which would mean that anybody could then register for that. They're hoping to add that here in the next week or so-ish.
Yep.
And that way, wherever you are, you can join, and it's on a Saturday and has a great lineup of speakers. So that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, check apologeticsevents.com and all our social media pages for that info.
Awesome. Elizabeth?
Yeah, good morning or afternoon, wherever you happen to be. I'm Elizabeth Rubio. I'm the admissions counselor for the Apologetics and Science and Religion programs. So I'll just be on the call. Feel free to ask any questions. I'll pop my email down in the chat too. So if you have further questions that are beyond the scope of this, we can chat there as well. So great to see you all. Hope this session is helpful for you.
Awesome. Well, Susan Leonard is with us today. She is a current student. She's been with us for about 2 years, and we got to, she lives in Washington, D.C. area, but we got to meet her a handful of times here on Biola's campus, and I got to meet with her when she was just a prospective student checking out our program. So she can definitely resonate with kind of where you are right now and checking things out and evaluating the program. I wanted to give her a chance to just have the floor and share a little bit about kind of who she is and what she does, what led her to apologetics.
Great, Michael, thank you. So hi, everybody. Like Michael's introduced me, my name is Susan Leonard. I am an 11th grade teacher at Annapolis Area Christian School in Annapolis, Maryland. You can see I'm here in my classroom now. When I started at Biola, I was teaching 8th graders. I'd been teaching them for almost a decade, and they were asking me questions in the classroom that were really interesting, to the point where I would say, I don't think I know the answer to that, but it's a brilliant question. And the more that students asked questions, and the more that I wrote them down and collected them and looked at them, I realized, wow, I don't think I've ever really examined my faith to that level of an 8th grader. And that was really shocking to me, because I am someone that's very logical. I do seek understanding. I'm someone that wants to know why. But their questions were driving at something that I hadn't actually ever done, and something not really practiced in the church often, at least in my area, certainly in this region of the country, and I can speak for that. And so I wanted to get trained. And I went to an ACSI conference, and I met a woman named Elizabeth Urbanowitz, and I walked up to her. I was going through the Colson Fellows, Colson Center for Worldview training program at the time, and I introduced myself, and she was all about worldview, and I said, I love worldview. We started to talk. She talked about Biola, and I said, you know, the Lord had really laid that on my heart. Can you tell me more about it? And then she introduced me to Michael. And so that journey began. What I would say is at the very beginning of the program, I want everybody to know I was nervous. I was really nervous. Michael's smiling. I remember my first class, and I just want to say that from the beginning. My first class, I remember I had to write a 200-word response online. And I remember I worked on that for like 6 hours. You know, I was so worried about what I was going to say. I thought I'm actually at school with these brilliant minds. and these brilliant thinkers. And I knew how much I didn't know. And I was so nervous. And if you have that feeling, I just want to say to you, that's exactly where I was. And the Lord just kept telling me to keep going, and to keep going, and to keep being challenged. And the more that I listened to that voice, and the more that I heard that call, the more confidence I gained, the more clarity I gained. And now I'm in an 11th grade classroom. And today I'm actually teaching on divine command theory and Islamic ethics and Islamic worldview as in comparison to the Christian one. And I am equipped. And I had a student at the end of the class bring tears. She had tears in her eyes. She said to me, you know, my father's Muslim and my mother is Christian, and we have a great divide in our house. And then she said this, I kid you not, I've never had a youth pastor or a pastor be able to explain to me the difference between the Islamic worldview and the Christian worldview like you just did. And that just happened in the last class. She was crying, and it's her father. And so I looked at her and said, and I'm so, this is the way the Lord moves. I want you to know that. That happened today. And I said, I can do this because of Biola. I told her that. The difference of what you just heard me teach was because of my experience at Biola. And I'm not making that up. And it happened today before this meeting. So I know I was supposed to share that with you. The last thing I will say, and I'll land here, Michael, if I've taken too much time. My first seminary, I did go to seminary. I went to a mainline liberal seminary, Protestant seminary, Methodist church, and it was in Washington, D.C. And my first seminary was during, I don't know if you all remember this, it was during the year where there was a sniper in Washington, D.C. And so I would sit on the Capitol Beltway in the night. I had babies, and so I would go to school at night, and I would sit on the Capitol Beltway for like 6 hours trying to get home. There were lights and huge spotlights up at every circle in Washington, D.C. It was crazy. And then the second seminary, here I am at Biola, there's a global pandemic. So I started to think there's something about my two experiences, like, wait a minute, Lord, what are you saying? So you find these bumps in the road, right? You get nervous. There are these bumps in the road. There's these just wonderful divine ironies. But I would just say, keep going. The Lord has brought you to this place, has written a call on your heart. And despite those feelings, there is a Christianity that is true, despite our feelings, despite what we think. It is true because of good reasons and evidence, and keep driving at that knowledge. And so I pray your journey would be filled with that drive to know that truth and that good evidence and reasons. These people here are phenomenal.
All right, so keep chatting questions, but I wanted to kind of switch gears and have Susan talk a little bit about kind of her experience in the program. You talked a little bit about kind of the beginning and being nervous and kind of starting out. What has your experience been like, over the past 2 years in your classes? And then eventually I'd like you to talk a little bit about what you've shared, with me and some of our faculty about kind of the changes at your school. If you're okay with that. Susan is at a Christian high school, and she can kind of get in a little bit to how she's using her degree, in that area.
All right, great. While you were doing your presentation, Michael, I was looking back at where some of these people, everybody here on the call is from, and to echo what you said, wow, people from British Columbia, Switzerland, Kazakhstan, Canada, Idaho, South Africa. That's my experience too in the classroom. And something that I was thinking that I wanted to add here, so I'm grateful for the opportunity to do that, is that you often wonder if an online program is going to have the same experience as a student that you would have if you were in a classroom, like in this classroom, like I am with people, and face to face. And that's a good question, and there's a lot of people that talk about and can talk into that. But I would say, from my experience as a student, I don't want to graduate, even though I want to graduate in May. And the reason why I don't is because I am in a routine now with people that are my beloved fellow student colleagues from all over the world, who I have come see pop into every class that I've been taking. And we have developed friendships and really a mission and a like-minded mission and ministry together online. And I just think that's extraordinary. And I can tell you, as a classroom teacher, before I started, I wanted to be on campus more. And I know the value of being in person and in-person learning. COVID hit, and so it was forced. I went back into the classroom because a teacher couldn't come back. A teacher walked out because of COVID concerns. And so the superintendent called me to come back. I was home in Washington, D.C. and not where I wanted to be in Biola in Southern California because of it. And I wanted to be in person more there. But I can now speak to with confidence that an online program, this one particularly, has been a rich and robust experience. And I mean that. And I can say that as a classroom teacher. So you will become deep friends with people in this program. To that end, also the teachers, Michael, you were talking about Zoom and different times and different classes where you'll have a Zoom class. The teachers, you know, God bless them with their schedules and what they do. I don't know when they sleep, but they are so great. They will write all the students and say, where are you in what part of the world? If they need to do 2 sessions, they'll do 2. If they need to do 3 Zoom sessions, they'll do 3. They are committed with their heart, soul, strength, and mind to this mission, and they will do what they can to equip you. And that's been my experience. So I don't worry where you are in what part of the world. And if that means, I've even had Dr. Smith, you know, do a Zoom call with 2 students. And you know what, if you can be with one of the top Christian philosophers and only 2 other students and you with him for an hour, what a gift, right? You know, I'll do that any day. And that's in my experience as a student. And I just wanted to talk about that in terms of online learning. And then just 2 more things to answer your questions. One more is, when I was watching you go through that list, Michael, of all the different classes that you have offered, I was thinking, you know, when I was an 8th grade teacher and all these students were asking me questions, what I started to do is I started to, you know, the Lord had put it on my heart to have an interest in apologetics. And so I started buying a lot of books, you know, and I had Evidence Demands a Verdict. I started getting all these great books from J.P. Moreland, you know, and I was just scouring through all this stuff. But what wasn't happening is that I really needed that directed learning. It wasn't sticking, and I wasn't getting you can read all those books, but I needed to be in a program. I needed to be guided through it, and I needed these men to be speaking themselves to me. And that became a difference. And I just want to the Lord had written it on my heart to just say that. You can get all this material and you can get it online, but actually taking a class from Sean McDowell, actually seeing him model it, talking to us about how to defend the resurrection is a very different thing than reading through Evidence Demands a Verdict. Listening to Mike Lacona talk about his research on the resurrection, having Dr. Clay Jones talk about evil and defend the origin of evil and the Christian worldview is an experience like none other. Having these philosophers like Dr. Smith teach you about metaphysics and epistemology. And I do believe what John Stonestreet says is true, that the question today is, what is a human being? That is the question. What does it mean to be a human? That's the battle in the culture today. And that's a question that's answered with metaphysics and apologetics. Miriam asked Dr. William Lane Craig, I cannot believe I was on a Zoom call with Dr. William Lane Craig last summer, and it was a lunch call, Michael's smiling, and we were all there and we could ask him anything we wanted. And it was amazing. I still have notes from that on my Google Drive that I go back and I refer to, because I say, I remember Dr. William Lane Craig answered that question. I think I'll use his answer on my post today. So that's really exciting. That's a little bit different, I think, than just going out and buying the books on your own. So I wanted to speak to that. In terms of teaching in a secular school environment, okay, this is someone's asking me in a direct message exactly the question that Michael wanted me to address. A little bit nuanced, but let me speak to that last point. So I work in, this question came to me, I think it's okay, it was a private message. Teaching in a secular school environment where you're not allowed to mention a particular religious worldview. Okay, I mean, wow. So I'm in a Christian school, the largest Christian school on the East Coast, ACSI Christian school on the East Coast. We have, at our maximum, we were about 900 to 1,000 students, K through 12. We are a covenant school, which means that we ask that at least one parent commit to the Christian faith before they are to be admitted to this school. I have found, and I've been sharing this with my professors this year, and this is what Michael was talking about, is that largely our students are not Christian. That we are largely looking at a secular culture across the board. And there are maybe pockets that have been raised in the Christian faith and understand salvation and understand doctrines, but many do not. It's postmodernism, it's atheism, and Sean McDowell has written about this and how Gen Z and the next generation is more secular than you think. So my job now, I feel very different as a Christian school teacher. Sorry, there's a bug. Is that I now feel like I know, I am now in a secular environment at a Christian school defending the Christian faith. And before I started at Biola, I would have never imagined, even just 2 years ago, I had no idea that was going to happen to the culture within 2 to 3 years. But then the Lord had sent me to this school and led me to the school to do just this and what I'm doing now. But I think that's how quickly the culture is changing. Dr. Bill Brown has talked about that at the Colson Center. Culture, he said, used to change, every 2 to 3 years. I think we probably could all probably say maybe 2 to 3 months. I don't know, maybe a year. I mean, it's changing quickly. And so I think no matter where you are, whether you're at a Christian school or a secular school, I think we're all looking at the same audience. And so we need to then be really trained and equipped with how to do what Sean McDowell often quotes for 1 Peter 3:15, to always be prepared to give a defense for the hope that is within you, but with gentleness and respect. You know, they will know they are Christians by their love, how we treat others, how we talk about other worldviews, but how we also stand with a firm foot in truth and are able to defend what it is, the Christian worldview, with accuracy and clarity and confidence. And that sounds easy, and I used to think it was until I started to learn. And then the more I learned with these men here at this school, the more I realized I didn't know. The more I realized how much there is to know, and the more I needed to just stick with it and just keep going and keep learning. And the more that I did that, the more God would equip me with what I needed for my sphere of influence. And as Chuck Colson said, he used to, he said with his first centurions, that's what the fellows used to be called: get equipped and stay at your post. Stay at your post. And so wherever you are, the Lord is calling you, equipping you, or calling you to get equipped, and maybe equipping you now, and to stay at your post and really speak into where you are in a culture that is desperate for a worldview that makes sense, and that is a worldview that can help human beings to flourish. Couple questions that came on. Anybody? Oh, Dr. Craig has a brilliant mind. Yes. Brilliant. What does Sean McDowell say about him? He's a paradox because he has 2 doctorates. I think that's funny. I don't know if I answered someone's question. Being allowed to mention a particular religious worldview where you're not allowed to mention a worldview in a secular school environment, you can learn how to do that well, I think, right? I mean, I have to be very careful every day that I'm not offending a culture and a group of students that find easy offense at things, because we're a postmodern culture where everybody's sort of offended and it's a feelings-based culture. And so I can't do that either. I just can't come in here and just kind of, be broadcasting the Christian worldview is the best one. It's the best one that shines brighter, fall in line, or, get off the bus, I can't do that. I also have to speak as if I'm in a situation where I'm not really kind of allowed to, in a sense, not precisely, but I got to be very careful how I navigate this, because if I navigate it in one direction the wrong way, and I lose a student, that can change a culture in a class and really turn them in another direction and dismiss me as an authority figure. So I think we're always doing this kind of tricky balance, and this tension of grace and truth, and one foot in grace and one foot, I think it's becoming more difficult to navigate that tension that's biblical, and that it's becoming even more real as we're living it out in today's culture. And I think, I know that this is the school that is helping me to understand how to navigate that tension. Yes, that tension is there. People are writing that in. So Michael, back to you.
Susan, would it be okay if I shared a few of the questions that you shared with us that students were asking?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so Susan, as she mentioned, shared this with some of our faculty and staff, and I thought this was eye-opening, especially given the perception of a Christian school and culture as a whole. And then you can obviously amplify this even further into that other various secular settings, whether that's in teaching or beyond. But this is just from this semester and the challenges that Susan's been facing with pushback and just at a Christian school, and students just having very real, honest questions. But why are we saying the Christian worldview is the only worldview that is true? This book is a Christian textbook. Why are we using it? Why are we using the Bible to point out fallacies of other worldviews? That doesn't seem fair. This textbook sounds like they think they're right and everyone else is wrong. Why is the language so strong? My reply, show me a sentence with a language that is too strong so I can learn. Here where it says this: Christianity views non-Christian worldviews as based on the basic principles of the world and not upon Christ, Colossians 2:8. And then it goes on to mention, a variety of other things. Who gets to determine what is truth anyway? And I know those hit home with Susan and with our team as well, and just being like, okay, wow, how blessed to get that feedback from your students, that they feel comfortable sharing that, because while that is a little bit unnerving, it gives you insight to where they actually are. I got young kids, and it's like, all right, when are we going to have, the sex talk and all that kind of stuff? And you're like, oh, everybody teaches you, okay, you got to ask questions, see what they know, as opposed to just avoiding it and then being surprised when, they're going to learn things other places. And I think it's the same thing across the board, with Christianity and our youth. They're getting this from all different directions. So I just wanted to share that. I don't know if Susan, if you have any kind of further comments on that, or if anybody has any specific questions that they wanted to ask, Susan at this time.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak into anybody if you want to unmute, but today we're in chapter 2. I mentioned this before. We just started the Islamic worldview in the Summit Ministries textbook, and I can't even get off the ground with it. I feel like I'm in a firing range. And so I had all this great plan today to do around the world and do all this really neat stuff, looking at different doctrine. I can't do it because you know what they said? Mrs. Leonard, I just got to say this, there's kind of a bias here. So I said, well, what is that? Well, this chapter starts with 9/11. How come chapter 1 in Christianity, when we looked at that worldview, didn't start with like the Crusades? Like, this is like really hypocritical. And the next thing, hand goes up. Well, what about God's killing of the Canaanite children? Like he ordered them to do that. How is that different from what, the radical jihadists are saying, and then what this book says about the radical jihadists and divine command theory? Those are tough questions. And to your point, when you were reading that, Michael, about the questions I was getting, who gets to determine truth anyway? There are pat answers we can give to that. But those pat answers are the answers that are not, that have been given, that aren't satisfying. And what I have found in my studies at Biola, to speak specifically to this experience, is that because I've studied metaphysics and epistemology, because I've studied worldview analysis with Dr. Smith and a leading philosopher, Christian philosopher, because I'm looking at essential Christian doctrine, because I'm studying scripture and authority, because I've looked at how to defend the resurrection, and that the Christian worldview hangs on that, right? And how do I defend that? And how do I say to the students when I'm showing the Christian worldview and the Islamic worldview and looking at the difference, when I'm able to talk about substance and the essence of God and the nature of who he is, which is very different than Allah, who is not a God that can be known, and explain the difference between divine command theory. All of these things satisfy the next generation and satisfy an atheistic set of ears, I think. People who are skeptical, we're really skeptical today, because I'm giving them something more, right? I'm giving them theology's handmaiden, which is philosophy. I'm giving them ideas that have been thought through by leading thinkers. And I think that's what they want. And it's not that they are so skeptical that we should dismiss that skepticism and say, oh, they're just unbelievers and they don't, No, I mean, they're craving it. They want us to answer it. And I think the culture, even though we see this tension, and Elaine, you were talking, yes, the tension's there, but that tension's there, but people want answers. So I think it's really exciting to be able to learn and to get equipped to be able to give it to them. And then when you don't know, say, gee, I don't know, but I'm going to go online and I'm going to talk to my professor. And that's what I've been doing, and sharing with professors at school and saying, either I get tripped up or this is what I'm hearing, and get the help that I need to be able to speak into it. I think that's really exciting. I think we're at an interesting time in our culture, but I think it's equally exciting and interesting if we look at it for what it is. Yes, I mean, I think someone just wrote, are there additional opportunities for students to conduct, additional research with professors besides what is strictly required for courses? I know that Michael and the team can speak to, I can speak that from personal experience. I mean, I am now taking courses from Professor Smith. I will have taken courses from him for maybe a year, couple of months, deliberately. But I do email with him from time to time and do other things that are helping me in my position, yes. And he is very helpful. He is an expert on essences and what that means in terms of how we're living out right now in the fact-value split and in a postmodern culture. And his work is expressly, directly helpful to me. And so, yes, but you could speak to that more directly, Michael.
There's a few different opportunities. I think one, Susan kind of shared about the openness of our faculty, sharing, what you are interested in, your current or future ministry goals. That can open up a lot of opportunities for them to really share. A lot of them have been doing this for 10 to 20 years, and so they have seen people take all sorts of different paths and can give expertise on that. And sometimes that's talking to them and sharing those goals and then saying, okay, can I maybe adapt an assignment that can be really immediately practical in me implementing this, so that it's not just staying in the head knowledge. Susan's in a great position where she can take that and immediately, really start implementing that and teaching her students, but not everybody's in that position. And so you can then kind of take things in a different direction. One opportunity is an independent study course where you can, get into a unique topic with a particular professor during a semester. There is a thesis option if you're looking to go on to further graduate studies and a PhD. You can do a thesis, and that's on a unique area of research. And then the other thing would be that apologetics practicum class, where you're really kind of diving into how you specifically are kind of prayerfully and strategically walking through how to utilize your degree. Biggest piece of advice is just, share who you are and get to know your, faculty members. Reach out, whoever's reaching out to them, they're able to know, okay, this student's interested in more, and they can certainly give that. Typical kind of class assignments, essays, generally speaking, and Susan can share her experience on this. Most classes lean more towards the writing side of things than, exams. But there are some classes, I'd say maybe more so on the theology or doctrine type side of things, that have a lot of kind of established material and memorization that do have kind of some quiz or exam components to them. Susan, anything you'd like to kind of add about the coursework for the classes?
Yeah, I mean, I think just give you a typical week, for instance, right? Like what would a week look like? So I'm here at a classroom all day. I teach 6 classes. And then I have a 7th. We actually do a practicum with our seniors. So I'm busy out of 8 class periods. So right now I'm taking 3 classes as a student at Biola, which seems like a lot. When I started, I did 1 or 2. Because, I was just getting my feet wet. And I think you learn a rhythm, right? You get into a rhythm, and it has to kind of get into a rhythm with your life and your relationships and your situation at work and whatnot. But each week, I'll typically, we'll have assigned readings for a particular class. And then we'll have posts on Canvas where we'll have to respond to specific questions that the professor will ask us. And maybe give us a list of 6 and we get to choose, or just to respond generally to the reading for that week. And then what happens then is we'll have a rubric for how that post will look, maybe 250 words, maybe there's no limit on words. You can just say, this is what I found interesting about this text, or like I said, you're responding to a specific question. And then there's sort of rules of engagement where other students then have to respond, and then you have to give maybe 2 responses depending on the professor for that week. And then you're given like maybe 6 or 7 days, or maybe even 10 days for maybe that one module to read that material, and then do maybe 2 to 5 posts of a particular word length. And that might be your week, running week to week. And then you'll have maybe a writing assignment where you're doing a précis or some kind of a overview of a particular textbook, or maybe a final term paper, where you're doing maybe typically 6 pages, term paper on a topic that you find interesting or that's applicable to your area of ministry. So they do allow that, to go to that last question, they do allow that kind of independent study to come in, even within the scope of what they're doing with their particular class. So week to week, you're reading and doing posts online, engaging with other students. The professors are coming in every day and evaluating it. They're landing in on those pages, and they're making comments and engaging with us. Maybe every couple of weeks, you'll get on there and do a Zoom. And then you're reading through texts and preparing towards maybe a term paper. In some cases, like Michael said, you might have a quiz, a reading quiz. They're typically like true, false, multiple choice. I think what Kevin Lewis said on a Zoom last week, he does Essential Christian Doctrine, brilliant professor. He said, we're not here, we're here to equip you to defend God's existence. We're not here to trip you up so that you leave and then say, I can't defend that God exists. Right? I mean, that's not the point. Like they really want you to really be able to go out and defend the truth of God's existence, and to be able to do it well. So that's sort of typical what the assignments look like. Course description, like a syllabus.
Yeah. So on the website, they have short descriptions that you can click on for classes. And, you can feel free to reach out to me, and I can, share, a couple with you. We usually don't make all of those available, but it is helpful to get an idea for, what a class looks like, and what that course load is like, especially for your first semester. And then once you're a current student, there's a helpful resources webpage that you have access to be able to, see various syllabi and help that better inform you for each semester and which courses you're going to take.
Yeah, in this book, so this is I'm reading this for my ethics class. This is Ethical Theory with Scott Smith, Dr. Scott Smith. So I'm reading an article or an essay in here this is about 10 pages. And then for this week, and then I additionally have his book that he wrote, In Search of Moral Knowledge, chapters 6, 7, and 8. So that's probably 10, 20, it might be like 60 pages a week of reading, right? I think that's right, Michael, for one class. And then but you're not having to read it all and then respond. You're reading through the week. I chunk it. So I say, okay, I'm going to do 10 to 15 pages today for each class and do one post. And then I'll chunk it the next day and do a little bit more so that I'm not burying myself. But I think you can do that. And like Michael said at the very beginning of the call, you can do it and really work within your schedule as a professional, whatever it is your time is requiring you to do, whether even if you're a mom with stay-at-home kids, you can grab that time too. That's very, very difficult to find, and be able to get the work done. But again, you get out of it. I always say this to my students too. You get out of it what you put into it. One thing that I would say, if I never saw you again, I would say this, and I hope I do, but I would say this, when you start, the thing that really helped me was keeping a Google Drive of all of my classwork and keeping it organized with each classes. So even my posts, I will save on a Google Drive and I will archive it so that helps me in other classes, because what I learn in scientific apologetics might help me in ethics class, what I learn in ethics might help me in my essential Christian doctrine class. And so collecting all that material together is a really wise thing to do, to not just respond and then get the work done, but keep it together, keep it organized. One class will feed on another. You'll get into a rhythm. It gets really fun. You make great friends. And like I said, to be able to study with the leading minds on worldview and apologetics is a gift like none other.
Yeah, I really like that idea, and I'm going to share that with other people, because there is this very unique interdisciplinary approach. Just when you look through all of these different classes, it's very unique in that regard, and that's something that you won't get just reading different apologetics books on particular topics, getting into metaphysics and epistemology or philosophy of religion, or some of these scripture and whatnot that are going to integrate in a variety of ways. So that's a helpful
and then and students ask questions. A lot of professors will write, respond to this reading with 250 words, respond to this question in the reading, and then leave at the very end, pose a question to your classmates. Well, first of all, that can be really hard, because that means you have to think deeply about what you're reading, right? And then you'll look and you'll see your colleague, another student wrote a question, and you'll think, wow, that was brilliant. But then you'll say, wow, and I'll go to work, and that question will hang with me through the day. I'll look for a student to answer it, possibly. I'll listen to conversations during the day, and I'll think about it. And then those questions, you'll go back and you'll respond to, but then you'll say, wait a minute, I remember when I was in John Bloom's class, we actually talked about that. Or I'll remember when I was on that call with Dr. William Lane Craig, he actually talked about Alvin Plantinga's warrant. And so maybe I should go back and look at my notes for that. And so to that interdisciplinary approach, you start to then, I just can find stuff and then just know. And that just also helps your collective memory and to get it into long-term memory, so that when you are speaking of it or teaching it or just talking to somebody in your family and defending the faith, that will be just something you draw on. It just becomes a part of your long-term working memory. So yeah, it's been a very helpful thing for me to do, Michael.
Yeah. And that's the practice field, right? You know, at getting all those questions from people all around the world with different occupations and everything, and then being able to really think through those and not just give the first answer, which is that pat answer that, you know, your brain just pops up with, and you're like, I don't know if that actually does it justice. But thinking about it and then coming back with a thoughtful response is a discipline, you know, especially in our fast-paced world where we just want that immediate gratification and, oh yeah, I got the answer. And so you really benefit from being in a graduate program where everybody wants to study this and they're personally interested in it. And so those questions and dialogues are really, really valuable. I want to be respectful of Susan's time as she is on her lunch break and is a teacher. And so we will all, we're all very thankful that you were able to join us. And if anybody else wants to stay on for an extra few minutes, I can answer any, you know, final questions you might have. Yeah.
And I just want to say thank you. And I just wish you all the best. And thank you very much. It's been an honor and a privilege to talk on behalf of this program.